Good evening, all of you. There's one more session on Phyloscopus warblers, I mean leaf warblers of India. It's going to be taken by Shashank Dalvi. He's one of the finest birders in India. I mean, I think he's the one who's seen most number of birds in India. And I'll give a small brief about the nature societies we organize. This is actually organized by Kottayam Nature Society and Alapi Naturalistry Society, who does a lot of uh, uh, groundwork and a lot of conservation in the around those areas. And we've been doing this is almost our 15 sessions we've done on different topics. So tomorrow, Dr. Raghu Chandawas will be talking about future of tiger conservation in India. I mean, he's one of the finest biologists on who done studies on snow leopards and tigers. So please come and join us for that talk also. And anyway, over to you, Shashank. Thank you so much for agreeing to give a talk. Over
Pleasure.
to you.
Good evening, everyone. So, what I'm going to do in next maybe hour or hour and a half maybe is just to talk about different leaf warblers which are there in the country, and we'll go try and see if it's possible to use some step-by-step option to try and eliminate some of the birds and to get to the ID level. So can everyone hear me right now, right? I think that's I'm audible. If I think someone can just say yes or something on group and chat, and then I will good to go.
Yes,
I
audible,
think
audible, audible.
yeah, okay, perfect. Sounds good. So we always so leaf warblers. When it comes to leaf warblers, we what exactly are they? So, for example, they belong to old world wobblers. And what do we mean by old world wobblers? Is just look at these eight odd images here. The top four are all dull brown looking birds, and bottom four are all bright looking, amazing looking birds. And of course, as the colors and everything goes, the bottom four are relatively easy to identify in the field, but look at top four. They belong to all Eurasia and basically Europe and Asia and Southeast Asia kind of distribution. The the bottom four are from neotropics, that is from Northern America and South America and other places where they breed. And those are called as New World wobblers. But what we get to see in our land is called as Old World wobblers. And Philoscopus are one of those typical Old World wobblers. And when we look at uh, Philoscopus wobbler or leaf wobblers, where are they distributed? So let's follow the cursor over here. So the majority of the distribution of leaf wobblers is across Himalayas, South Assam hills, all the way to Southeast Asia, even some of the smallest possible islands in West Papua as well, and as well as majority of China, just uh, south of Tibetan Plateau, and all the way in other parts of China as well. And that's where a dominant breeding distribution of leaf wobbler is. At the same time, they breed all the way in Eurasia, so in all the way uh, north of China as well as some parts of Europe. But when it comes to majority of distribution, majority of the species, Himalayas and China is the possibly uh, the most dominant distribution. Before I proceed, if I'm going too fast, do let me know because I tend to go sometimes really fast during the talk. So do stop me. You can ping me on chat, and someone can just ask me to slow down. Uh, but when it comes to within Indian limits, where exactly these leaf wobblers are. So most are leaf wobblers. I think there are about 34, 35 species of leaf wobblers which are found in India, out of which about 23, 24 species breed within Indian limits. And majority of the distribution, again, as I said, is in Himalayas. So they show two kinds of distributions. One is like some of them only winter, and the wintering this population can. So some of the birds which breed in Himalayas can also winter in India, as well as some birds winter all the way, which winter in India can come all the way from northern latitudes. So when it comes to Indian birds, we are going to look about 20, 425 species of warblers today. So they are they're usually found singly or in pairs. And in non-breeding seasons, some of them participate in mixed flocks, or they in fact form a flocks. But most of the birds, even in wintering grounds, do form a territories. That is something which is really amazing about these wintering birds. Also, lots of these species show altitudinal migration. Basically, if even though they're breeding in Himalayas, some of the species can just come down from high elevations of Himalayas to foothills, and they again go back to high elevation. Or, as I said earlier, some of them can migrate really long distances. Like just imagine a greenish warbler which breed across Tibetan plateau, maybe just weighs 6 or 7 grams, can winter all the way in southernmost tip of India as well. So they are very long distance migrant. They are very skulky that way, very inconspicuous when it comes to when they feed. And this is what has happened in wobbler taxonomy in last few years. So, for example, when in I think in 1930s, the wobbler number stood around 29 species were recognized, leaf wobblers especially, and the number more or less remained same till mid 1990s. So there were, like, I think, just what, 3 species or got added in the entire wobbler taxonomy in the span of 70 odd years and 65 odd years. And then, thanks to work done by Per Alstrom, work done by Martin, and the wobbler number just shot up. And this mainly constitutes not only just morphology or taxonomy, but also with the help of genetic tools. So when the genetic tools were used, it became very apparent that there are multiple species involved in a single. So this is called as cryptic speciation. The birds which superficially look may similar may have multiple species involved in it. And this is exactly what happened with these wobblers. So as we speak, the world number or world taxonomy recognized, IOC taxonomy recognizes about 88 species of leaf wobblers across world, and that's something amazing. Also, we'll come to that in some time about when we talk about Sassaricus wobblers, which earlier called as Sassaricus. But let's see why leaf wobblers had this taxonomy problem or why they faced challenges in past. So now sometime back we just spoke about how leaf wobblers can migrate long distances. And imagine a wobbler, like let's say a lemon rumped wobbler, which is just 4.5 grams in weight or 5 grams in weight. So they undergo go 2 kinds of plumages. Like basically they molt once in a year, and there is a fresh plumage and it's a worn plumage. So what do I mean by plumage? And before we could come into plumage, in plumage, what they do, they try and change their feathers. And when they change their feathers, they have to regrow their feathers. Now, if you take a blood sample from a bird can actually get that blood drop replaced without much difficulty. But let's say if the bird wants to replace its feather, it has to invest a lot more energy to regrow the entire feather. And just imagine a small wobbler which migrates a long distance. After reaching to its breeding ground, it has to mold. That means it has to invest a lot more energy in it. So what these wobblers usually do, they reach their breeding grounds, but do not mold. They first breed. And once the breeding gets over and the food availability is still there in good amount, that's the time they mold. And that's the exact time when they have to migrate back to their low elevations or the long distance migration. So you will see lots of these birds when they reach wintering grounds, they're in good plumage. You can see the wing bars because all these, the wear effects hasn't happened yet. But these wear effects happen when they are about to leave for their breeding grounds. And that's the time when you can actually see the wing bars are not very distinct or the colors are not very obvious. The birds are look a lot more faded. And because of all these things, one of the main identification pointer is more or less remained as a call or song of the bird. But what we will try and do today is we'll try and see if we can try and circumvent some of these things to get to a species identification. So again, one more set of problem which we have faced is um, we did not know much of distribution of these birds in the past, and elevational distribution also was not very clear when they used to breed and when they used to winter and other things. And one of the main identification characters for leaf wobblers is the it's about details of the sixth primary, which is impossible to see in the field anyway. And when it comes to bird books, there are always the statements like supercilium of a moderate length, or underparts brown without olive, or flanks which are creamy versus cramps which are fulvous. And that is something which makes life little bit more difficult, and sometimes when even more misleading rather than helping identification. But before we come to all these identification characters, I would like to take your attention to some of the things which warblers do, leaf warblers do, or when they behave or how they feed is something which is very important. So, for example, this is a blight sleep wobbler, and most of the wobblers, like almost all wobblers, feed on insects. And when they feed on insects, what important thing they do is they either pick out insects from the branch or a leaf. There are some wobblers which actually fly catch as well, but most of them, when they try and catch insects, they do by multiple ways of feeding. So, for example, there is something called as stand picking, where wobbler is sitting on one of the branches and trying to reach insect on the other branch or other leaf and trying to pull the insect out. And this is called as stand picking. So usually the wobblers which are bigger in size, they are the ones which show this kind of behavior. The bigger leaf wobblers like Blight's leaf, Greenwich, large-billed wobbler, Lubgin wobbler, Arctic wobbler. All these wobblers or Western ground wobbler, they would like to sit at on one branch and try and pick out insect from different leaves or something like that. Then there is another kind of feeding behavior which is called as hovering and flycatching. This is classic lemon rump wobbler who is going after a small now more leaf here and showing most of his identification features as well in the process. But this is where some of the smaller size wobblers are very hyperactive. They hover a lot. They try and catch insects. And this is something which you should always notice in the field. If you are in the field, try and see how the bird is behaving in the whole process. Because once you figure out that, then the identification you get more identification clues and what we other than what we are going to discuss in few minutes. So, and there is one more feeding behavior called a bark leaning, but we'll come to that when we come to the bird itself, because there's only one wobbler which does something like this. So let's come to the plumage of the bird. So we always have this classic plumage topography of a bird, where we see, oh, what are lobes, what are lateral crown stripe, what are eye stripe, what are median coverts, what are greater coverts, secondaries, primaries, rump, and many things, flanks, breast. But when it comes to it changes from birder to birder. But when it comes to me, and when I want to look for these, and when I look at leaf wobblers, I look out for a 4 or 5 distinct things in the wobbler. First thing I notice is it has a wing bar or not. So look at the wing bar. I concentrate on the crown stripe. I concentrate on the rump patch. I concentrate on tertial edges, and I concentrate on the outer tail feathers. And if you concentrate on these few things, like I suggested earlier, in this particular order, then it's possible to sort out some of the wobblers or filter out some of the wobblers. So what I said earlier is, first you should see, and I'm going to repeat these things again and again and again in this presentation, and you will come at the end of it, you might find it slightly helpful. And why I'm trying to drill these things again and again is because of a reason, and we'll come to that step by step. So we always, when you see a leaf wobbler, first you should look out for if the wing bar is present or absent. Once you figure out that, the next thing you should do is a bird is small or a bird is large. You can actually look at the small and large size bird earlier as well, but in the key point of view, if you look at it, the size is a very important factor. Then you can look for tertial edges which are present or absent. Personally, I find it always difficult to notice tertial edges in already a hyperactive bird. But then you can look out for rump patch or a crown stripe if it's present or absent. And finally, what you can do is you can look at a lateral tail margin. Basically, you're looking at the outer tail feathers of the bird, if they are white or not. So always remember these 5 steps. So let's take a step 1. So out of those 35 wobblers which are there in the country, and if you come across a leaf wobbler, and if you see a leaf wobbler without a wing bar, then what you can do is you can eliminate almost all other wobblers except 8 or 9 species which are found in the country. And that makes our life simpler, because what was there earlier was a larger data set of 35 wobblers, and now you're looking only at a subset of these wobblers. So let's come to these wobblers one by one. So let's come to our commonest wobbler in more or less in the open area, which is called as chiffchaff. So when you look at chiffchaff, and what I usually do is, let's say first you should look out for if the wing bar are present or absent. And if the wing bar are absent, and then you go ahead and look at the different characteristics. The bill is very tiny and the bill is more or less dark. There are some chiffchaff may show a pale lower mandible, but more or less the bill will be dark and as well as the leg. But at the same time, note the tail length. The tail of a chiffchaff is also very small compared to the body. So when you look at the birds, try and see the shape of the birds. Like that's exactly what I usually do. I like to see the shape and size of the bird and the habitat more than anything else, uh, other than identifying the minute possible characters at the first go. So so again, coming back to the point, wing bars are absent. Second thing is because all leaf wobblers will show supercilium. So supercilium is present or not doesn't matter. But what matters is the wing bar is present or not. And if the wing bar is absent, look at the body proportion. If the bill is small, legs are dark, and if the tail is also short, there's a good chance that it's being a chiffchaff. The chiffchaffs are always restless. They flick their wings and tail very nervously. And when it comes to the call of this bird, it always gives this very high pitch chee, chee, chee kind of call, which is nicely evenly spaced. The reason I am trying to, I will play the songs and calls as and when it's possible, is because that's also one of the important key. I think someone draw, can someone, oh yeah, it's gone. Okay, great. So let's come to the next wobbler, and why I was trying to stress on the overall body proportion, you'll find out immediately. So look at this is a mountain chiffchaff, and look at the tail proportion to the body. So when you look at the mountain chiffchaff, it will look more or less similar to common chiffchaff. There are no wing bars. There is no olive in the tinge. But if you don't see these things, and if you what you can do, if you just see the tail to body proportion, the tail of mountain chiffchaff is almost always very long compared to the body of a chiffchaff, common chiffchaff, and that's what gives you the one of the best identification features. Also, mountain chiffchaff or Kashmir chiffchaff, it's called as, shows the supercilium which is distinct in front of the eye as well as behind the eye. So usually, what happens in common chiffchaff is common chiffchaff shows supercilium is slightly weaker in front of the eye. And when you listen to the song is very pleasant, very long, which goes up and down, very unlikely of common chiffchaff. So if you are birding in, uh, let's say Ladakh or anywhere in Trans Himalayas, and if you see a bunch of trees in an open habitat, it's likely a possibility that the mountain chiffchaff could be present there. It's almost invariably in every possible tree the bird is present. And the only time when you may see a common chiffchaff along with a mountain chiffchaff, if you are birding in somewhere in, let's say, Punjab or just foothills of Western Himalayas, where they may overlap. Like let's say Harike. Harike is the best place to see both mountain chiffchaff and even common chiffchaff in the same habitat sometimes, same nearby areas in winter. Otherwise, if you are birding in South India, the chances of mountain chiffchaff being there are much less or rarer that way. Now let's see what we can do with the next one. So this is plain leaf wobbler, looks very much like chiffchaff or common chiffchaff. Winters in northwest of the country, uh, found again in small, in singly or in pairs. But if you look at the if you look at a bird in the winter as well as in summer, the behavior of this bird is very distinct. It will just move from branch to branch continuously, always nervous, always flicking its tail and wings, even more so than the common chiffchaff. And if you want to see what I'm talking about, then you should just try and see if you can go on YouTube sometime. Try and see Plain Leaf Wobblers video by Sachin Shirupalli from DNP, and you will know what exactly I'm talking about. A very distinct behavior, unlike chiffchaff. Now let's look for the song and call. I think this is the call, I guess. Yeah, this is a single note trick, but repeated multiple times back to back. Lot more distinct song compared to common chiffchaff, and it also gives song in its wintering ground as well. So if you are in DNP, sometimes you may be able to hear a song of Plain Leaf Wobbler. a very distinct sounding song as well. So again, coming back to the original point, so you are now looking at first three wobblers which we saw was where did not have wing bars, they are brown in color, and they were open habitat, more or less in a uh, dry scrub kind of habitat. Now we come to the next set of wobblers. Again, these wobblers are without wing bars, but they're yellowish in color. So again, first thing you notice, there is no wing bar. They are usually found singly, but you may find them in small flocks as well in winter. And the most important thing with vertical sleeve wobbler, when you see it, it has a yellowish in color, but always look at a supercilium color. If supercilium color matches with the throat color and it does not have wing bar, then it's a tickle sleeve wobbler. That's one of the main identification feature for tickle sleeve wobbler. They are always found more or less next to the forest. Most of the time they are on the trees other than on the ground, but they do descend on the ground sometimes, especially in the high elevation where the trees are very dwarf or very short, and breeds in Ladakh region again, but winters in all the way to the southernmost tip of India in along Western Ghats. So when it comes to song and call, the song is very distinct. It has a very nice trill, and the only place you may be able to hear them is they are either they're on passage or if they are in the breeding in Ladakh. And the song is the call is with chip 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 continuous chip 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 kind of thing. And if you are birding, let's say in and around Bangalore, around Nandi Hills, if you are birding, let's say in Western Ghats, high elevation, you'll constantly hear this chip 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 kind of call coming from a canopy, and that's one of the best way to recognize if this bird is around or not. So coming to the next one in this thing is another wobbler, which is also without wing bar, which is slightly yellowish in color. But when it comes to the behavior, this wobbler is very unique. Sulfur-bellied wobblers always invariably feed like a nuthatch or a creeper, and they're always on the ground, they're on the tree bark, they're also on the building walls sometimes, dry streams, boulders, and the behavior is completely different. But let's say if you see this bird sitting on a branch, how will you tell them apart? So again, this is a wobbler without wing bars. This is a wobbler which is yellowish in color, or more or less the yellowish tinge. But when you see the supercilium is always brighter than the throat color. And when you see a supercilium which is brighter compared to throat color, it's more or less the chance, like it's always a sulfur-bellied wobbler. And again, again just like tickle leaf wobbler, it breeds in Ladakh. But when it winters, it usually prefers slightly drier habitats than the wet habitat. Now let's listen to the song and call of this bird. Reduce the volume of this. Very nice trills again, but much slower in pace compared to the tickle sleep wobbler which we heard earlier. And when you listen to call, that always chip chip chip. Most of the time, this bird is always solitary in nature, even in wintering grounds as well. So if you see a solitary wobbler, dull brown in color with a brighter supercilium and feeding like a nuthatch or a creeper, then you can just say, oh, it looks like a sulfur-bellied wobbler, and you will be almost correct. And let's come to the next wobbler now. So what we did first, we saw three wobblers, which were without wing bars, dull brown in color, but dry and open habitat. Then we saw two wobblers without wing bars, yellowish in color, more or less in forest areas in winter. And now we are come to the third set of wobbler, again without wing bar, but they are brown in color, but they winter near in and around water bodies. So when you look at a smoky wobbler invariably in a classic smoky wobbler winter habitat is there is a water hyacinth around, is a water body with water hyacinth, there is a floating wood somewhere, and it's very difficult to see wobbler moving out of this undergrowth or maybe dense vegetation floating over the water. And the thing which I usually try and notice in smoky wobbler is the color of their legs. So if you see a wobbler without wing bar, without with the dull brown in color right next to water, then you should try and see the leg color. And it's more or less, it's always a smoky wobbler. And listen to the call of smoky wobbler here. It's always very dull, chip, 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 chip. And it has slightly, it's contiguous call. It's not like a call which stops. It's always continuous. So after this, we are going to look at another dull brown color wobbler without wing bars, again found next to the water. This one is dusky wobbler. And one important thing which you might notice in dusky wobbler is the leg color. The leg color will be more or less pale in color. What we saw in smoky was much darker leg color. In this, they're not as partial as smoky wobbler when it comes to staying next to the water or like in a floating habitat. This will be in an undergrowth next to the water bodies. And also the call is very, very, very distinct again. It has a look at it, it's more spaced out compared to the smoky wobbler, and very high pitched compared to smoky. So again, to revise what I said earlier, this is third set of wobbler. First set was brown in color, in open habitat, in dry habitat, without wing bars, and brown colored birds. Second wing barless wobblers which we saw were through near in and around forested habitat, yellowish in color. Third set which we saw is again without wing bars, in an open habitat, but next to the water and vegetation. And now we come to the fourth of the lot, which is a Tytler's leaf wobbler, and it has a greenish tinge, again without wing bars. They breed in a very small habitat in the westernmost Himalayas and winter along in many places in Western Ghats, all the way from close to Mumbai, Mathiran, all the way to the southernmost tip of India. And they try and winter in a habitat which is slightly higher up in elevation in mountains again. But one of the main ID features of this bird, like what happens in winter, they may winter along with lot of greenish wobblers, and it can get confusing sometimes. But what you should look out for in this particular bird is to look at the bill shape. So if you see a greenish tinge wobbler without wing bar, and if you concentrate on the bill is always like a chisel, very sharp, pointy bill, and that is one of the classic giveaway of Tytler's leaf wobbler. And when it comes to the song, if you don't go to Kashmir, you may not be even able to hear the bird sing. Sometimes they do sing before they leave for their breeding grounds, and that's how they sound during that time. Always very simple 2-3 note call. You may notice there is a floral notice in the background. But anyway, coming back to the call, all leaf wobblers usually have a very simple songs and calls compared to Acrocephalus wobbler, which have lot more complex songs, majority of them. Look at all. It's very distinct call. So again, what I'm trying to say here is when you look at the wobblers, not only just look where you're don't try and open the bird book and start identifying them. See the habitat, see the distribution of birds, see the elevation of birds, and then try and see if you can identify these wobblers one by one. Okay, someone again has to press backspace to remove those lines. David.
Not me.
Hello.
Someone else. Sorry, not me. Someone else. Okay. Can you go back to your previous slide and come back?
Sure. Previous. I think on one of the someone has drawn things on the computer by mistake.
Okay, you can continue. Yeah, it's okay.
I'll continue, right? Okay.
Yeah. Please.
Okay. So let's see what is the next group we are going to look at. So now we are done with more or less the wobblers which had without wing bars. Now we're going to look at which leaf warblers which have wing bars, which are large in size, which has one or two wing bars basically, and which does not have the crown stripe. Crown stripe in the sense exactly at the center of the head if there is a pale line present or absent. So when you look at it, in all three birds here, they don't show a central crown stripe, and that's will make your life a little bit easier if you observe a warbler with wing bars and without crown stripe and large in size. So these three birds are green warbler, greenish warbler, and large-billed leaf warbler. And we'll go one by one in all these species. So first one is large-billed leaf warbler. So large-billed leaf warbler, when you look at it, again, large size warbler, just one or two wing bars, a very strong bill. Usually when they are always solitary, and when they feed, they will always find they're very lethargic in nature when they are feeding on branches. Very slow moving leaf warbler in the tree. They also, if you look at this part, especially near the face, and it is mottling next to the ear cover, just below ear cover. A lot of area is mottled all the way here. There are spots here, and also there is a slight bit of streaking sometimes, but more or less if you see the face of large-billed leaf warbler is very distinct. One more thing which we might see is the supercilium length. The supercilium is very strong in large-billed leaf warbler. It goes all the way to the nape. So you can see it has reached all the way to the nape of the bird, and usually very lethargic in nature, very canopy dwelling bird. But when you listen to the song, is absolutely mind blowing. So song actually goes tee 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 tee, very high pitched song, and try and listen to the call. It's just two notes. It's like a seesaw. Chee chee. One more thing which I will tell you, especially in its breeding grounds, when you see a large-billed leaf warbler, there will be some, because as a larger size leaf warbler, it has a slightly larger territory. And usually a territory of a large-billed leaf warbler will have some water body, a small stream, a small pond, or something or the other. I'm not saying that's an ideal feature, but that's one of the ways these warblers when they are breeding. So now we come to one of our commonest leaf warblers in the country when it comes to the wintering grounds. They're omnipresent everywhere, almost throughout the country. And now let's see if we can see. So again, last leaf warbler, one or two pale wing bars are present. Median crown stripe is absent. And when you look at the bird, what you should look out for is
Shashank, sorry to butt in between. Can you pause for a second? We'll try to clear this. Edit.
No problem.
Thanks. Okay. If someone can give us the instructions how to clear this. Dr. Srimar is trying. No, Dr. Srimar is trying to do that. He's the host.
ചെയ്യാൻ നോക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ കാർത്തിക്?
Okay, perfect. Good to go.
Yeah, it's good to go now.
Okay. So again, let's come back to the greenish warblers. So when you look at greenish warblers, they are large in size. They don't have crown stripe. They show one or two pale wing bars. But what you should do, you should notice is when they winter, they always establish their wintering territories, and they defend their territories. Usually they stick to the canopy. They have very pale underside compared to green warbler. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the song not from the breeding ground, but especially when they winter. So when they winter area, in the month of, let's say, September onward, they start reaching South India. And what you may notice is they sing. So there are two reasons why they sing. The first time when they reach in the wintering grounds, they start establishing their wintering territory, and that's the reason they sing. And once the territories are established, the only time they might sing is the second individual enters their territory. So while they're defending their territory. So now listen to the song. I think this recording is from winter, and you can actually listen to two distinct individuals singing. So one is first individual. Second individual is responding to the first individual again. First one is singing back, and the second individual again singing. So this goes back and forth till the intruder is chased out or the host loses the territory, I guess. So, but when we are birding in winter, what you should look out for is a large size warbler with wing bars, no crown stripe, and very pale underbody. But you should also look out for the call. So call of this bird is two-note call. Can you hear this two-note? Shui, shui. And this comes very handy if you're trying to identify them from the green warbler. So there are places where both of them can winter in the same area. In Mumbai, we get them. Bangalore, I've seen them in the same places, many places actually. So both of them can be in the same area, but you look at two distinct things. One is the color of the belly and throat and face, but it has a yellowish tinge. Then the next one, which we are going to talk about, is a green warbler, and if everything is pale below, then it's more or less the greenish warbler. So let's come to the greenish warbler or green warbler, and you can immediately see the tinge of yellow over here, tinge of yellow over here, and that's one of the main ID features when you are trying to separate bright green warbler from the greenish warbler. Again, the same thing, large sized leaf warbler, one or two pale wing bars are present, and medium crown stripe is absent. Again, form the same thing, forms wintering territories because they were split from greenish warbler anyway. And so behavior wise, habitat wise, everything more or less is similar. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play the song, but we may be able to hear the song as soon as they winter or when the intruder enters the territory. But more than that, try and call. So the call is always trisyllabic, like 3-note call, and it continues like that. But in this particular slide, I have included a third recording. The reason why I included a third recording is why one should always pay attention to the call and not try and identify bird immediately and wait for call or song to happen to go on for a few seconds. The reason behind that is this is exactly the reason. So there are times when greenish warblers in the wintering ground, when they start calling, they may start their call by 2-note, and they may switch to 3-note and again switch to 2-note, and it's exactly the classic example of this recording is exactly like that. It's like a 2-note starting the call. The 3-note it has become. Let's continue. 3-note. Continues. Again, gives 2-note, 3-2-note call. And so it can be again 2-note. So it can get sometimes tricky. So I would say don't try and jump to warbler identification immediately. Try and take as much time as possible. Try and listen to the call and song, even though they are distinctive. Try and listen to them properly before you call out the name of the bird. Now, okay. Now we come to the next set of leaf warblers. So first set which we saw were without wing bars, and without wing bars we divided them into 4 different categories: brown in color in open habitat, brown in color next to the water, yellow in color next to the forest, and last one was the greenish in color but next to the forest. Second set of warblers which we saw were large in size, couple of wing bars without crown stripe, and it had either there were only 3 warblers there. So next to the face, if there's a mottling is there or not. Then we saw there's a belly is white against belly or throat, which is yellow, to separate between the greenish and green. Now we are come to the next set of warblers, which are large in size. Again, 1 or 2 wing bars are present along with the median crown stripe. So what is median crown stripe? Is there's a line which runs all the way from here to the nape. It's present in Blythe's leaf warbler as well as western crown leaf warbler. So let's come to the leaf warbler again. So first thing you'll know when it's a Blythe's leaf warbler or western crown leaf warbler, in their breeding grounds especially, they try and flick their wings alternatively. This exactly is a classic behavior where the Blythe's leaf warbler is trying to flick its wings one by one. It always forages in canopy or sometimes in bushes as well. And most importantly, the bill is very fleshy. But when it comes to, let's say there are certain areas where Blythe's leaf warbler and western crown warbler can be together. We'll come to that in some time. And try and listen to the song. The classic Blythe's leaf warbler, which is very slightly more complex compared to the leaf warbler, but the call, very distinct 2-note kind of call. And so look at the bird. Bird is more or less compact. The reason why I'm asking you again and again to look at the compact size of the bird is when we come to the next one, which is western crown warbler. And immediately, first thing you'll notice how elongated the bird is. The bird in western crown leaf warbler is always invariably very long. It may show more or less the same characteristics, like the wing bars are present, crown stripe is also present, but when it fleshy bill is also present. But when it comes to structurally, it's always very longish bird. It can form flocks in winter. Like I remember in Western Ghats, I've seen about 170 odd western crown warblers together in a single flock. So it can get sometimes very crazy, but and always feeds again in the canopy or in bushes. But when you look at the shape of the bird itself is, and usually when you look at a western crown leaf warbler, more paler color to Blythe's leaf warbler. And let's sing the song. Lot more nasal, lot more high pitched compared to Blythe's leaf warbler. One second. Those things repeat. Now we are going to look at next set of leaf warbblers, which are small in size. They have 1 or 2 wing bars. There is faint crown stripe or almost, which is almost negligible. There is no pale drum. And if you see the combination of these characteristics, then
Shashank,
yes.
Can you please repeat the previous slide because the audio was not clear to all. Previous slide.
This one?
Audio. The previous slide was not clear.
This is the previous slide.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This slide. Okay.
This slide. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So should I continue on this slide one more time?
Yeah.
Okay. So western crown warbler, again, it looks very similar to Blythe's leaf warbler, but it has median crown stripe, it has wing bars, it has a fleshy bill. But the first thing you may notice from the previous picture, which was like this, which was the bird was very compact. And as soon as you see a western crown leaf warbler, the bird is very long and elongated. So it's always very long bird. And they are often very pale leaf warbler, and this is a classic example of the typical western ground leaf warbler. They do winter in large flocks in South India, and they participate in mixed hunting flocks as well. And the song is a lot more nasal and high pitched compared to black leaf. And same is the call, very loud call, very repetitively they call like this, and that's one of the main identification feature between a large size one or two wing bars with median ground stripe wobblers. So there are only two wobblers which we have to pay attention to. Now let's go to the next one. The next set of wobblers are small in size. They do have one or two wing bars. They have faint or almost negligible crown stripe, median crown stripe, and there is no pale rump patch. So if you see a combination of these four things, then you have to worry about only two wobblers. The one on the left is a yellow browed wobbler. The one on the right is the Hume's leaf wobbler. And first, let's see Hume's leaf wobbler. A tiny compact bird, a very short tail, very small bill, uh, very hyperactive, usually feeds from branch to branch all the time. Uh, One of the commonest leaf wobblers when it comes to northern parts of India, present almost everywhere. It's a garden wobbler literally in many places. Usually feeds high up in the canopy or in bushes, and sometimes they do come down to ground, like very rarely, but they do. And let's listen to the call of this bird. And I've purposefully added two calls. There are two distinct call types in Hume's leaf warbler. And if you listen to the call, it's very just like I think most of the people in South India can hear Greenish warblers quite regularly and identify them. Similarly, Hume's leaf warbler can be like a very omnipresent call. Other day, I was I think listening to some TV show or something, and in the background, which was there in that I think interview or something like that. But anyway, let's come to the call. It is a very distinct, repeated call. It can be spaced out, and in certain cases, it can be repeated multiple times, like this. They usually try and feed in areas which are slightly open, again, open forest or open habitat as well. So let's come to the next wobbler. Again, small in size. They have almost all the time they show two wing bars. There is faint or almost negligible crown stripe. Usually the tree. Look at the leg color. So again, a very longish bird with a very long body proportion. So we saw earlier with the same characteristics, but I think again people could hear me. I think people could, right? Okay. So again, when it comes to the Hume's leaf wobbler, the bird was very compact. But now when it comes to yellow browed wobbler, it shows almost the same identification features. It is small, one or two wing bars, no, or almost missing with no pale rump patch. But when it comes to the shape, it's always elongated. A very long, distinct supercilium which comes all the way to the nape, which is usually not the case in Hume's leaf wobbler. If we go back, see, the eye stripe hardly even present till behind the eye. But look at this in a yellow browed wobbler, it always comes all the way down to the nape. And leg color is also a pale. So this is one wobbler I think everyone should look out for in South India as well as many places where it's not been reported yet. So in last few years, I've been seeing reports of these birds in many parts of South India. And what has happened now is what has happened now is that a lot of birds have been present, recorded in lots of parts of Europe as well in last few years. So the main wintering ground for these warblers has been Southeast Asia, but still when it comes to this particular bird, it's been showing up in many places. It could be because of the breeding ranges, changes in breeding ranges. That could be just because of climate change as well. A lot of these small birds will show their movement because of climate change, and these warblers are not exception to this particular change. And do look out for yellow-browed warbler uh, in lot more in numbers in coming years. And now listen to the song of yellow-browed warbler compared to Hume's warbler. A very distinct call. It may sound like a Hume's warbler, but if you have birded enough in Northeast India, in plains of Assam or Arunachal or anywhere in South Assam is one of the most heard wobbler there. And so it's just, see, wobbler calls and songs, it's just about practice. The more you hear, the more you listen, the more you remember. It's just like a practice. It's again and again you practice more, you will learn more. And that's exactly is the case with wobbler calls and songs as well. And so it's identification. If you see individuals again and again, your identification will definitely improve. So often it goes after the insects on the wings. So next set of wobblers is again small in size, again 1 or 2 wing bars. There is a median crown stripe basically. There is a pale drum patch which is not visible in these two photos, but the pale drum patch is there. And if you see a combination of these characters put together, then there are only 2 wobblers which you have to think about. One is Brooks's leaf wobbler. The second one is lemon-rumped wobbler. And let's start with lemon-rumped wobbler. One of the main identification feature for lemon-rumped wobbler, it's always hyperactive. It's hovering. It's trying to go after the insects on the wings all the time, trying to pull out insects from leaf leaning, but while in flight. But main ID feature of this bird is this eye stripe, which is hooked. It's like almost like a question mark, and it's one of the classic identification feature for this wobbler. There are some wobblers which may show this, but they are not found in India, or there is one, but we'll talk about in one of the last slides. So again, listen to the song. It has nice trill in the song as well, and with trill which is followed by a note which is slightly complex in the end. I'm trying to emphasize on the trill here because when we listen to the buff-barred wobbler, you'll know what I'm talking about. So it's always a trill followed by a slightly complex song. And when you listen to the call, it's very distinct call. It's always chip, chip. And mainly you have to worry about this bird while birding in the Himalayan foothills or in Himalayas or South Assam hills. But look at the eye stripe, and then more or less identification of lemon-rumped wobbler becomes very easy. Also, how they hover and how they catch insects. Now we come to the next wobbler. This is Brooks's leaf wobbler. Again, a wobbler with a very small wintering range as well. Not a very large wintering range, but they are usually found in and around water bodies, trees next to the water bodies. Found higher up in the trees, can join mixed hunting flock. It has 2 wing bars. It has a median crown stripe. It has pale drum, which is usually visible when they hover and go after the insects. Again, just like a lemon-rumped wobbler, eye stripe is not hooked. That is one of the main ID feature. And most importantly, it has a yellowish tinge overall in the body, which is very distinct in this particular leaf wobbler. So if you look at, again, a small size leaf wobbler, 1 or 2 wing bars, pale median crown stripe, and pale drum patch, you can think of only 2 birds. And in those 2 birds, you have to just see if it has a yellow tinge. Also, in Brooks's leaf wobbler, they always show this kind of bill appearance on the lower mandible. And again, the call is very Hume's leaf wobbler kind of call, because both of them can be in the same area. But also look out for, in Hume's leaf wobbler, there is hardly any distinct crown stripe and no pale drum. So you try and eliminate birds by looking at certain characteristics and eliminating them from the identification. You narrow down your search, basically. That's exactly birding is all about. Now we go to slightly complex or most patterned leaf wobblers. So they are small in size. They have one or wing bars. They have pale median ground stripe. They have pale drum. Which look at buff bar wobbler. The first thing you may notice, I think again, can you hear me again?
Audio is stuck.
You can hear me, right?
Hello?
I think Shashank is went out of network. He'll be back in few minutes. We'll just hold on for 1 minute.
I'm back.
Okay, you're back.
Can you see me and hear me?
Yeah.
Can you see me as well?
Yeah, you can. We can see you.
Okay, perfect. Let me go back live. Share. And can everyone see the presentation right now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Hold on. Just presentation. Now?
No.
I think now
Yeah,
it should be.
now it's now got it. Thanks.
So everyone could hear me till where? I think I'll just repeat this slide one more time. So now we are going to look at okay. So here we go. So buff barred wobbler, when you look at it, it's a small size wobbler without, of course, the wing bars are also present. It has median crown stripe. It has pale drum and white outer tail feathers. But okay, but what you should look out for is a very small bill compared to the body. So when you look at buff barred wobbler, the bill proportion to the body is always very small, and they mainly feed on anthers as well a lot of time. And you can see a lot of these wobblers may show some pollen attached to them in Himalayas, especially rhododendron flower anthers. But when it comes to song, it has a very distinct. The wing bars are also yellowish in color here. So let's come back to song and call. I asked you guys to pay attention when it was a call of a lemon rump wobbler, which had slightly complex call at the end of the trill. Now listen to the song over here. It is always like a trill. So again, one of the main ID features. So always try and listen to the entire song rather than just trying to call out birds immediately once you see them or hear them. So this is one of the wobblers which one can see up to mid elevation in Himalayas. Often next to the forest, slightly on the open habitat as well. So see all these characters put together along with yellowish wing bars, small size bill. It's a good chance that you are just trying to tell them apart between ashy throated, which look very distinct compared to the buff barred wobbler. And also whenever they feed, they also hover after insects, and you can see the white outer tail feathers and pale drum patch whenever they feed. They're always very distinctly visible. So the only thing which we have added in this particular group is the white outer tail feathers, which were not present in the previous wobblers. Now let's come to the next one, which is ashy throated wobbler. Again, the same thing, small size, one or two pale wing bars, pale median crown stripe, pale rump, and white outer tail feathers. But look at the contrast between the throat and the belly. Belly will be almost yellowish in most of the plumages, and which contrasts nicely with the gray head with the slightly white crown and ground stripe and grayish lateral ground stripes, and that makes identification of this bird very easy that way. And listen to the song. It's only 2 notes, sometimes 3 notes. Usually it gives 2 note, 2 note. It should give 3 note as well. Hopefully it gives. Yep, that's 3 note call. And that's how the ashy throated warbler sings during breeding season. And when it comes to the call, it's very non-descript, very faint call. But you have to listen to it very carefully in the field. But it's very distinct looking warbler anyway. So one of the main ID features are mentioned. Always try and narrow down the approach to the bird slowly, one by step. Now let's go to the next one. Now you may have to answer this question, and you can type in your answer. The answer. So what do you think? Both these birds are same bird or different birds, and why? You can start typing answers here. Not a problem. But also tell me why they're different. Someone says left one is a flycatcher. Someone is saying no wing bar. Left one is a canary. Okay. Let's keep on going. Bill is different. Different wing bar. Cheek is different. Right. There's someone said cheek color. Correct. Okay. Broken eye-ring. Let's keep on going. Someone says whistlers both. Okay. Leg and wing bar. Right one is a gray cheek because gray extend front of the eye. Oh, that's very strange. I did not write that comment, but anyway, there's some other Shashank Dalvi there. Okay, so let's try and see. Bill is different. So most of the guys are trying to see the bill, wing, the color of the legs, or even bill shape and other things. But what I should look out for over here is these two are the wobblers. They may look like a graded canary flycatcher, but both of them are very tiny in shape and size. And look at the cheek color, as someone has suggested earlier. The cheek of gray-cheeked warbler is always uniform, and the lowers as well. But when it comes to a white spectacle warbler, this is a yellowish tinge right over here, which continues in the lowers as well. And when it comes to the song and call, songs are very, very distinct. So is the habitat preference. So gray-cheeked warbler, usually when you get to see it, it's usually present in a slightly as well. The song is somewhat like this. But when it comes to white spectacle warbler, the song is like this. It's not what has a lot more trills as well. And almost invariably, if you see a white spectacle warbler, they tend to prefer slightly good habitat compared to gray-cheeked warblers. In breeding time, when they're around, they try and see a good forest mixed with bamboo, and that's a classic white spectacle warbler habitat. And that itself gives you a very important ID pointer. So even though these may superficially look like a graded canary flycatcher, both of them are wobblers, and that they are so sometimes it always important to spend a lot more time when you see such wobblers, which may get confusing because the differences between some of the wobblers can be really small. So let's go to the next one, and this is something which was very fascinating. So till late 1990s, now the Sicericus genus does not exist anymore. they have all clubbed under Philoscopus. But in late 1990s, all these Hycercus warblers, all the 6 species were considered one. Plus Hycercus burki, which is also golden spectacle warbler. So in this particular complex, so poor Alstom was birding in China, and imagine that he was birding on a mountain slope, and he was birding at a lower elevation, and warbler had lot more trills. Then he went to the mid elevation. The warbler song became very simple, and again he went to the high elevation. The same warbler with lot more trills in it, which made him very fascinated about why the song types are different at different elevation. And when he went back to the museum specimens and start checking the museum specimen at different elevation, he found out there are not only one species or two species, but 6 different species of Sacercus warbler that time were considered as a single species and clubbed them together. Thankfully for us, we don't have to worry about 6 species of Sacercus burki complex. We have to worry about only 3. So now Philoscopus burki, to be more precise, group. So first of them is Whistler's warbler. So first thing you should know, see a yellow color warbler with a very distinct crown stripe, should try and see if the eye ring is complete or not. If the eye ring is complete, then it's a Whistler's warbler. None of the green crown or gray crown warbler, which look similar and from the same complex, have a broken eye ring. And also the crown stripe faints at the base of the bill. So if you see these two identification features, your identification of Whistler's warbler or golden crown, what was the Burki complex? Golden spectacle warbler complex becomes very easy. And try and listen to the song. Very simple song that way. Sometimes it gets little complex after this, but nothing beyond that. So always try, when you see a golden spectacle warbler complex bird, try and see eye ring as well as the crown stripe, if it present all the way to the base of the bill. So let's go to the next one. Again in the golden spectacle warbler complex, this is a green crown warbler, but look at the eye ring here. The eye ring is broken right behind the eye, and that itself gives you the first clue of identification. So for example, there is crown stripe which present all the way to the base of the bill, and the eye ring is broken. So let's go back to the previous slide and see the eye ring is complete here, and the base of the bill, the crown stripe does not reach the base of the bill. But look over here, the eye ring is broken and crown stripe is present all the way to the base of the bill. And that itself is one of the main ID features for between green crown and Whistler's warbler. Also, they are found in slightly degraded habitat as well compared to Whistler's warbler when they breed. And let's listen to the song. It has a lot more trills in its song compared to Whistler's warbler. Also, when you're birding, you should try and see how much of the distribution is there while in your birding site of these warblers. So for example, if you're birding in Western Himalayas, you may see Whistler's warbler and green crown warbler together. So in certain places in Eastern Himalayas as well, but you won't see gray crown warbler here. But let's say if you're birding in South Assam hills, then you don't have to worry about green crown warbler, because that is almost absent in that habitat, or that the distribution is not there. So what you look out for over there is between Whistler's warbler and a gray crown warbler, which is next. So this is a gray crown warbler. Again, the eye ring is broken behind the eye, but look at the crown stripe. So either side of the head there is a distinct gray, which is well as the crown stripe comes all the way to the base of the bill. And almost all the time this bird is there in a degraded habitat where just some bushes and secondary forest and gray crown warbler is always around. And this one has a lot more trills compared to Whistler's warbler song. So that makes, so when you look at the distributions, when you look at the elevation and habitat, and then you look at the small identification features, then the wobbler identification can become slightly easier than usual. So let's now come to the easiest wobblers of the lot. These are graded wobbler, which has a gray head, all yellowish, nice yellow body. I think there are some 4 or 5 distinct subspecies within India, all the way from Western Himalayas to South Assam hills. And what you should do is, when you look at the gray crowned wobbler, it always has this very distinct song in a degraded habitat. Like it's always there in the degraded habitat. Now listen to the song. This is one of the examples where bird morphologically looks very different than other wobblers, but the song of this wobbler can sound similar to yellow-winged wobbler. It's one of those examples where the songs are similar, but at the same time the calls are, so the features are very distinct. So let's go to the next one. This is a yellow-winged wobbler, and if you listen to the song first, it sounds very similar to graded wobbler, but when it looks as a feature wise, it has no white on the head, nice yellow lateral crown stripes, so black crown stripes, and yellow median crown stripe, yellow wen. They're always found in a good forest. They form mixed hunting flocks in winter, and one of the easiest birds to recognize when it comes to, they usually breed in up to about 1,000 odd meters in Himalayas. And then another easy bird, this is a chestnut crowned wobbler, very distinct looking patterned wobbler. The only leaf wobbler in India which shows red on the crown, nice eye ring, nice yellowish tinge on the wings and flanks, vent as well, unlike any other leaf wobblers which we saw earlier. And the song is very, very, very nasal. A very distinct song, almost it's unmistakable song in the forest. So now we have come down to, so we first looked at wobblers without wing bars. If the wing bars were present, then we looked at the size. If the size were large or small, if it's large size, then we looked at if the crown stripe was present or not. If the wobbler was, then there were three options. Then we saw next set of wobblers which had big in size, but with a crown stripe and wing bars. There were just 2 options there. Then we came to the next set of wobblers which were small in size with wing bars, without yellow rum, and there were again a couple of options. So we try and narrow down the wobbler into small, the process of elimination. So let's see what we can find out from the next slide. So now you start typing in your answer what this bird it could be and why it is that. We went through all the wobblers of regularly finding wobblers in leaf wobblers in India, and now I would like to ask you guys, what do you think about this bird? At least let's go through the process of the identification. Go ahead. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Helium.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the first thing. Is it something which we should look out for? First, what is the first thing which we should look out for in wobblers? I don't want direct answer. I want wing bars are present. The first thing, correct? Okay. So wing bars are present. Now, what next you want to look out for? Legs or something else? 2 wing bar. Okay. Continue. What is the next feature after the wing bars? Pale median crown. Exactly. So now you have come to the next thing, crown. Okay. Continue. So let's say the wing bars are present, crown stripe is present, but you should ask me something which you haven't asked me yet. Wing tertials. Why you want to look for wing tertials here? Something which is no compact build, okay, but something else which you should ask me about. Tail, rump, habitat. No, so before all these things, location, okay, but something which is very important, which is missing. Call, legs, question, size, exactly. Now someone is asking me what sizes. Exactly. So first you should see if the wing bars are present or not. You should see if the crown stripe is there or not. But before that, you should ask me what is the size of the bird. So I would say this is a large size bird. Now tell me what could be the options. It's a large size bird in Himalayas with two wing bars with a median crown stripe. So what could be the two options? Everyone is answering. Okay, now people are saying blights or western crown. Exactly. Okay. So now we are trying to see the process of identification, how it goes, how we can narrow it down. So now we know that it's either it's a blight leaf warbler or a western crown leaf warbler. Now, okay, I'll tell you, give you the distribution. Okay, it's crown exactly. Now it's a compact. Someone just mentioned compact as well. So if it's a compact, then it's a blight leaf warbler. That's exactly how one should narrow down. And just imagine you're answering these questions or trying to narrow down these wobblers without me even giving you the song or call of the bird or even the distributional range for that matter. So now let's see what's next. Oops. Okay. Now what do you think about this bird? Again, let's go through the process of identification of leaf wobbler. What do you think this bird is? No wing bar, dark legs, small. Okay, no wing bar. First, wing bars, exactly. So, does everyone agree? No wing bars, short tail. Someone mentioned dark bill. Okay, okay. Go ahead, go ahead. Supercilium. All wobblers will have supercilium, but yeah, behind the eye. Okay, okay, that's good. Someone said common chiffchaff. But one more important thing, which should be which should be seen in this bird. Uniform color. One more thing. Fine bill. Can anyone see the color of the wing panels here? Can anyone see a olive tinge there? Right over here, the wing olive tinge in the wing, and that's the reason why it's a common chiffchaff. And you're identifying this bird without even me telling you the habitat. Good, good. That's good progress and compact in shape. Exactly. Now let's go to next wobbler. Let's see what do we think about this one. Okay, broken eye ring. So how many wobblers with a broken eye ring here? Only two. Okay. Someone says green crown wobbler, but why it's green crown and why it's not gray crown is my question. Okay. Okay, legs are not really important right now. Continue. Base of the bill, perfect. Broken eye ring. So broken eye ring, we know only two wobblers, right? So you should ask me one question which you haven't asked me yet. Gray is absent. You're absolutely right. I would say green crown wobbler it's perfectly the green crown wobbler. Distribution, exactly. Because green crown wobbler and gray crown wobbler usually don't overlap in India. So if you look at the distribution, green crown wobbler is present up till eastern Himalayas, and grey crown wobbler usually this has a distribution in South Assam hills, all the way from Wolong below. So that's exactly how you should try and say. And it's, of course, as it's a green crown wobbler, it's slightly degraded habitat. Grey crown wobbler will be in even more degraded habitat. Absolutely right. Let's see what is the next one. Okay, correct. Green crown wobbler, absolutely right. Now let's see what do you think about this bird. Two wing bars. Okay, size, big size bird. Someone asked me about the size. It's a large size wobbler, not brightly colored. Okay, continue. Black legs, no crown stripe. Exactly. Excellent. Habitat. It was next to a forest basically, but good. No crown stripe bill. Very pale underside. Exactly. Bang on. So what are the options? Compact bird. Okay. So you are looking at what birds you should look out. Large size wobbler with wing bars without crown stripe. What are the options first? Without crown stripe. So give me the options. Okay, green, large bill, and greenish. Absolutely right. So within these three warblers, which one has a yellowish tinge? Now try and concentrate on the face here and the entire belly, which is nice and yellow. The bill is not very distinct here, very slightly smaller bill. Supercilium ends somewhere around here. But most importantly, in these three wobbler, it has, so greenish has a nice white belly, and as a reason it's a greenish wobbler and not large bill. Green wobbler will have a nice yellow throat, yellowish supercilium, and other things. So another nice bird, which is greenish wobbler, exactly. Okay, let's come to the next one. So now you have come to the one more wobbler. What do you think this wobbler is? How will you, let's try and narrow it down. Size, a small size wobbler. Let's go through the process. Two wing bars, exactly. Wing bars are present, tail is small. Supercilium up to the nape. Okay. So first you will notice small size, okay. You notice two wing bars are present, crown stripe is present. Then you're looking at hooked eye stripe, prominent eye stripe, yes. Mark eye, okay, lemon rum, exactly. Bang on. So let's stop the, so sorry guys, I took your exam, even though it wasn't, it's okay. Anyway, let's see. So now I've included a couple of more slides where which some of these wobblers are present in India, which I did not include in the presentation because they are not very regular. That per se. Like for example, buff-throated wobbler. About 2 years back, Mike Prince and I bumped onto buff-throated wobbler in Mandala, and I might have seen that bird for like I don't know, for more than 10-15 years, and I just overlooked the bird for all these years. And then that particular day, it looks slightly different, so we investigate more, and now we know the buff-throated wobbler breeds in small numbers in western, at least western Arunachal Pradesh. And now we have this year and last year put together, we must have got I don't know, more than 7-8 records of buff-throated wobblers. So the best place to see them is, I would say, if you go to Mandala in Himalayas, western Arunachal Pradesh. Another bird which is regular in India, only in Andaman and Nicobar as of now, is Arctic warbler, a very large lethargic wobbler, which may look like greenish wobbler. Two-barred wobbler is also present there, as well as in northeast India. Claudia's leaf wobbler, that wobbler is present. It's definitely there in India. There have been specimens which are collected, but it's impossible to tell them apart if we try and if the bird is not singing. If the bird is in hand, it's possible. Otherwise, Claudia's leaf wobbler will be impossible to tell them apart from White's leaf wobbler in northeast of India. Eastern ground wobbler. Umesh and I got to see some eastern ground wobblers in Namdapha quite a few years ago. Again, one of those birds which should be there in good numbers, or maybe definitely wintering in Indian limits, but we haven't seen them yet. Pale leg leaf wobbler should be there in Nicobar. I've seen it once. I think if I remember it correctly, there's a collected specimen from Nakunda Island as well. Chinese leaf wobbler, another bird which is present. There are some sound recordings from Bhutan. 2015, one bird responded to the tape in Wolong, and then I think 2016 even Saurabh got to one. Can anyone hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello? Okay. Because someone said they can't hear me. So, so Chinese leaf wobbler are again present in should be there in India, but they may get overlooked with a lot of these lemon rump wobblers in especially in Northeast India. So one has to listen to the song of these birds in coming years. Also, I'm sure these three wobblers should be there in India wintering sometime or the other, but not yet recorded, but should be around. Alpine wobbler or alpine leaf wobbler, there's a collected specimen from Nepal, which looks very similar superficially to Tickle's leaf warbler. So one has to listen to the song of this bird again. Yellow streaked warbler should be there in Northeast India wintering sometime because it's there in Southeast Asia as well. Davison's leaf warbler recorded from northernmost Myanmar, even on the other side of Arunachal Pradesh in China. So should be around again. One has to just look out for these three warblers in coming years. And I would like to end the presentation with something like this, where main identification. So everyone has a different ways of looking at birds, and they should not try and change their style. So the way I look at the bird is like how they fit in the entire habitat, the distributions. The more homework you do, say warblers or any birding for that matter, is always about doing a good homework before you go to the field. And if you do good homework, then birding is easy. So it's always about doing good homework, try and combine all features together. Not only just don't only just rely only on call or song, or just don't only look at only features, but try and see all these things, look at the entire picture together. And main thing is try and listen and try and see these birds again and again and again. The more you listen and more you hear, easier the identification will become. And I would like to thank, these are the three main references which I use for this presentation. So if you can catch hold of these three things, I would like to, if you want, again, I can always email them to you. These are like one of the reference materials which I've used. Also, I would like to thank David and entire Kottayam Nature Society team for organizing this talk. Amay and Mayuresh, who actually had a mock talk with me when we were trying to do presentation earlier online. And for photos, I would like to thank all the photographers. All these photos are available in public forum. So are the sound recordings. And go and listen to these songs and calls and try and listen to thing. And I would definitely share my email address as well. No problem. So if you have questions, you can definitely ask me.
Thank you so much, Shashank. It was a fantastic presentation, one of the best we had in this season.
So I'm very happy that I was at the end of the session. I could see a lot of birders trying to see wobblers, even without calls. I was very amazed. That's brilliant.
So probably what you can do is you can quickly go through this question session. Choose only the relevant one, probably. And probably 10 questions you can choose. Yeah.
How can you ID Eastern Crown? Okay, and Claudias and Two-Barred from their similar counterparts in Northeast. So again, in Two-Barred, try and see the bird which is very lethargic in the canopy, moves very slowly, has two wing bars. Try and listen to the call, but can be tricky. Try and record the songs as much as possible. Eastern Crown usually should show yellowish vent. So with the crown stripe, basically it should look similar to Blythe's leaf warbler. At the same time, try and see if the vent color is yellow or not. Claudias will be impossible to tell unless they're singing. So you have to listen to the call or the song to memorize. Any good book, paper, references to read out all these. Okay, so I like the illustrations which are there in Rasmussen's book about leaf wobblers. Try and see if you can catch hold of Paul Alstrom's presentation as well, where he has given a lot of these wobblers and spoken about them. But if you try and see the wobblers with these kind of ID pointers put together, the birding can be, leaf wobblers can be a little easy. Where do you see buff-throated in mainly? There nowadays are quite a few records all the way from Sikkim, Arunachal Pradesh, some parts of Meghalaya, Mizoram as well. So a lot more things popping up. Look, Northeast India, we are just like I think overlooking them. Then what else? What can be ecological significance when why the birds grow feathers outside breeding? Because they want to save their energy because growing feathers take a lot of energy out of warblers, especially small sized birds. So that's the reason why they try and molt after, before they start migrating. So when they start a long distance journey, they try and see, they try and mold before that, and feathers and growing condition. How to differentiate between reed warblers and smoky and dusky? Okay, so all of them can be found in the similar. It's a nice question. They are found in a similar habitat. So, but the main thing about reed warbler is they have rounded tails, and also along with that, they have a very distinct bill. So, bill are a lot more heavier compared to smoky and dusky warblers. Very strong bill, slanting forehead most of the time. So that's also one of the main ID features for the birds. Then what exactly is the cryptic speciation? Okay, so the cryptic speciation is something which the birds may look very similar to each other. Like, okay, the example which I gave of a golden spectacle warbler, which was thought to be a one species, but when scientists went and they did morphometry, songs, as well as DNA, which is called as like integrated taxonomy, when you put all three things together, they realize that not only one, but there's 6 species. Is something called as cryptic speciation, where superficially birds may look as a single species, but they have a lot more species involved. And it is very important when it comes for conservation point of view. So earlier, everyone thought, oh, golden spectacle warbler is present all the way from Western Himalayas to Southeast Asia, to the other parts of China and in many places. But once they split into 6 species, the ranges of these birds became very small. So they have conservation implications as well. Okay. Anything else? Anyone else is asking something? Why do you think the most of the leaf warblers winter in North India does not come to Western Ghats due to environmental conditions or like temperatures? It all depends on the see. There, this answer can be given in multiple. There could be multiple reasons. It could be evolutionary point of view also, where their wintering grounds and their breeding grounds were historically, and if they started moving northern because of environmental condition, they started moving northern parts or southern parts depending on that, or also food availability as well. Anything else? Any changes in their migration due to climate change? A lot of warblers in neotropics, especially where the research has been done, are showing so the change in temperature by half a degree on an average is making them move 50 kilometers north every time it happens. Every half a degree or 1 degree change is making that much difference. So that's kind of impact. So a lot of warblers in Northern America have moved their territories or the breeding grounds by 160 kilometers. In Himalayas, in coming years, we would expect them to move higher up in elevation every year, and that could be a problem because the kind of food they're getting available at higher elevations, which a very significant conservation challenge in the future. So where do they make nest? So there are lots of warblers breed in different places. They breed, some of them breed even on the wall. Some of them breed in on trees, or even nice mossy nests. So it changes from species to species. Every species has a different way of nesting. All species are active in the morning and evening, but do they have specific timing? No, even the leaf warblers are more or less active throughout the day as well. They do slow down in the afternoon, but as they are territorial, they keep moving around in the same area again and again. So if you are burning in the winter territory of a leaf warbler, and if you spend enough time, the warbler will come back to the same tree in some time or the other.
Is there any hybridation recorded in leaf warblers in India?
Not yet, but even if it is there, it will be very difficult to recognize right away. And with the climate change, there's a possibility that may happen in future. It's already happening in neotropic birds and especially golden wing warblers in US. So I won't be surprised if something like that happens in India as well in future years, coming years. Why they're called as leaf warblers? I think mainly they feed in and around leaves, and that could be the reason. And I don't know. Even I never thought about it till now. Impacts of linear fragmentation on warblers. I think they might be a little bit more safer when it comes to linear fragmentation impact, because unlike, let's say, babblers, which are weak flyers, warblers are strong flyers, and they may be able to cross over these linear intrusions. So there could be a possibility of that they may not get. On an average, how big is the territory of warbler? Okay, so let's say in 5 hectare plot in Himalayas, when Trevor Price and I helped him out with some of his studies, a large bill leaf wobbler had just one pair in 5 hectare plot, that is like 200 meters by 250 meters. On the other hand, there used to be at least 2 pairs of light sleeve wobbler in the same kind of habitat. So we were 100 meters by 100 meters, 100 meters by 125, 150 meters or something like that.
That's the same question.
Sorry.
The same question. Territorial refers how much territory. Someone asked in Facebook also.
Yeah,
people
same.
are, yeah,
okay, same thing. We saw different species hunt together as a hunting party, although they form territory. Correct. Morning and late afternoon in the Himalaya foothills, we saw them hunting together in Sal forest. Yes, it's more or less that happens with. In fact, there are certain studies in neotropics that even the young ones of the previous generation form the next mixed hunting flock, and all these mixed hunting flocks have territory. And in this kind of cases, sometimes when they have mixed hunting flocks, a linear intrusion can actually form the border of the territories.
I think the most of questions are over.
Over, right? I'm just going through it one by one.
So probably you can put your email also there.
Yes, I will put my email. So my email address is shang.da@gmail.com. S is small though. Oops. Oh, I think by mistake, I think it went to the private thing. Let me get back to the, hold on. Everyone publicly. Oops. No. Why it is still just everyone publicly and private? Let's see if that happens.
Everyone in meeting.
@gmail. Has it gone to everyone? No, it's still going to privately for some reason. I changed the settings. Okay, save chat. No. Okay, one second. Hold on. Okay, hold on. It is for some reason everyone in the meeting. Okay, let's see. Here you go. The S is small in this. I hope that it helped some of you guys at least.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shashank.
My pleasure.
I mean, it was a wonderful presentation. On behalf of Kottayam Nature Society and Alleppey Natural History Society, we extend our thanks. I mean, hope to hear some more other interesting talk. I mean, if the lockdown extend, please come back with some more session. I'll come back to you. So probably you can.
Mumbai birders. I think Mumbai birders will be indoors a lot more than you guys.
Probably will come back, and you can give us more talks on this kind of interesting information. And also, just to add, tomorrow we'll have a very interesting talk on tigers. I mean, future of tiger conservation.
Yes,
and
it'll be
that's super cool presentation. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Stay safe, everyone. Stay indoors.
Stay indoors. My pleasure.